guys, so in our last video, our video about making a comic about making comics, so our video about making comics, I guess, we brainstormed together our concept. We know what characters, we know what art style. We also brainstormed our plot. So instead of writing a script, since this is just a 5-page comic that's mostly an instructional comic, I don't really have a script for this. I really just have a series of action. Now, I can sit down before I start sketching and think about all the actions I want to convey, but I might make notes, but I'm not going to do that this time. I'll do that in another video, and I do have videos here on the channel where I do just that. So today, we're taking these rough layouts. These are just a blueprint of our panel setup with a couple of panels sketched in. We're going to take these and we're going to refine them into rough thumbnails, and then we're going to refine those into tight thumbnails. You don't have to work that tight if it doesn't work for you. In fact, maybe I'll skip all that and I'll just go straight to like sketching on my thumbnail templates. What do you guys think? This is a fairly straightforward comic. Doesn't really require a lot of shot choices. What's really most important is showing the character doing the action so that people can understand it. So clarity. This is an instructional comic. Clarity is the most important thing in this comic. So rather than fiddling around with a lot of different shot choices, I think I'm going to go ahead and print my templates, and I'll have a link in the description for you guys there. They are 2" by 3" thumbnail templates, and I'll put the original source where I originally got them in the description below so that the person who created them can get fair credit. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and print those out and get started from there. So while I struggle with getting my printer to print my thumbnail templates, I can just start kind of sketching the ideas that I have in my head and kind of labeling it. And I don't have to stick to these. Heck, I might even change the main character out. Just make it autobio. And that would explain why they have a laptop and they're not teeny tiny. And if that's the case, then I do need to do a character design. That's weird. So P4 should just be all inking, but oh, I see pencils. So these are my preferred thumbnail templates. Sometimes I'll make thumbnail templates, sometimes I'll do a different format and I need 4 coma, but these are really my preferred ones that I've used for hundreds of comic pages. And I'm just going to quickly kind of explain. What's neat about these is there's several neat things about these. So there's 4 to a page, so you can kind of get a view of your scene. There's a place for you to write the page number down. There's border hash marks, so you can easily and neatly lay out your borders. There's various trims. So this would be what's safe to print, and then all the way out to this dotted line would be what would be considered like borderless or bleed printing. And you don't have to do it this way. You can do it however you wish. I don't do it that way, but it's really helpful for just sort of breaking down your page really easily. You can also put the title of your work right there. So I'm going to go ahead and rough out my thumbnails, and then I'm going to do my character designs. And I'm just going to pull these out from my sketchbook. I'll put them back in later, but that'll kind of free up some table space. And my tools for this part are, give me a sec, let me make some room, I apologize. My trusty non-photo blue pencil, talked about this in a lot of videos, and a mechanical pencil with bee lead in it. And bee lead is nice because it's nice and dark, and it'll go over the non-photo blue lead quite nicely. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just kind of loosely sketching everything in. And when I'm doing Cara pages, I will usually do my thumbnails on my script. I'll do my layouts on my script until I'm like really decided that this is like a good script or a good thumbnail for me, and then I will commit it to the piece of paper. And the reason I do that is I hate erasing, and I also like being able to see all the decisions that I've made in the past and kind of work my way through things because I'm very forgetful. And it also allows me, you could fill this with like 3 bad ones and 1 good one, or you can do all your iterations elsewhere and save this for your good ones. So the good ones are all here concisely. So I just kind of want to break this page into 3, but not necessarily 3 even parts. And normally I would recommend printing on really cheap copy paper. This is some garbage cardstock I got on sale that I don't care for, but I really would recommend printing on cheap copy paper because this isn't the stage that people are going to see anyway. And you might want to have an eraser handy in case you get, say, your proportions wrong. Like brainstorming takes up a fine amount of space, and I guess I just want to move layout just a little bit. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of sketching in all of my panels before I commit to drawing them in. Now that I've sort of sketched in all my panel borders, I've decided I actually want to take a little detour and go ahead and design the main character. The reason I want to do that is it's actually going to kind of change the proportions I use in the thumbnails. And I like trying to keep my proportions as real, like not as realistic, but consistent throughout the whole piece. It's just easier for me. And it's easier for me if I start early on rather than changing my mind and kind of having to revisit that. So I decided I was going to just go ahead and use myself as the main character. And I want to kind of base the style off of what I have for my avatar here on YouTube. But I think I'm going to go a little simpler. So if you want to see that, I can pop a link in, or I can pop in the image, or you can just check out my my header. Move everything so I have actual factual room to work. And I kind of want to do a cartoony style since that tends to be accessible, and it's also a little easier for me to draw. So I start with a circle, and then I do kind of my hourglass shaped rectangle. I have a lot of drawing tutorials here on this channel, so if you want something a little more in-depth, I highly recommend you check out one of those, but I'll still walk you through the process anyway. See, so I already have kind of an idea of what I want in mind, and I also kind of know what I want the end product to look like. I want it to be black and white with maybe a spot color. And the reason is entirely time constraints. I just really do not have time to be working on another comic in addition to finishing Inktober, teaching a class, and trying to work on Kara. So if I'm going to do this, I have to get in and get out. So I have to do something that is going to be attractive because I don't want to waste my time, but also easy to do and something I'm comfortable with. I'm also doing sort of a take on my detailed Chibi Art Style, and this is something I do a lot of commissions on at cons, so I can do this art style even if I was rolling off a cliff, falling to my death. And my process for doing comics, especially the early stages, it varies from project to project. Sometimes I'll take it all the way out to a very tight script like I do with 7-inch Kara. Sometimes I leave my script really loose because I'm really just conveying a series of actions. So feel free to be flexible, to work within what your comic needs, or work at your own comfort level, unless you're writing for someone else. And then that's a collaboration that y'all should discuss beforehand. Okay, so we've got kind of the basic skeletal sketch of the figure. And I apologize because I know non-photo blue doesn't show up very well on camera. But I want this demonstration to be kind of accurate to what I work with. So even if I opt not to draw this figure every single time in the thumbnails, doing this, having a character design in mind, helps me keep in mind my proportions and keep in mind the scale of the objects I'm going to draw around this character and how they interact with objects. And I may decide to change certain things, like her hands are way too big. They're bigger than her feet, so I need to knock those down a little bit. So the nice thing about drawing in a really simple style or telling a really simple story is that if you do your thumbnails tight enough, you can kind of skip the rough stage and just do a lot of your revisions in the pencil stage. The rough stage is really your opportunity to tighten up your figure drawing, to tighten up your construction, to do some perspective. If you don't need it and it takes up time, you don't have to do it. You don't have to be a slave to your process. It's really about finding the process that suits you, suits the project, and suits the time you have to work with. Okay, so I have finished tightening up my thumbnails, penciling my thumbnails, and as always, I want to point out that, yeah, it looks really cool. It's nice and shiny. It's aluminum. This thing is death on my hand. The reason I use it is because in order to kind of get my graphite to really stand out on the non-photo blue, I use a very soft lead. I use a B lead, and I kind of really have to bear down in order for the marks to really show up. And the reason I want them to show up is I want my scanner to pick them up, and the darker the lines I put down, the easier it's going to be to drop the blue line and then sort of get a really nice, clean digital blue line that I can print onto paper. And I'll go over that a little bit later. But bearing down like that, especially on this paper here, it's easier on cheap copier paper. But on this sort of like presentation paper that I got on sale, this is a big mistake. And if I had anything else I could use, I would not be using this. But I ran out of paper while making minis. So this is what I'm using. So I really, really recommend you guys just use cheap copier paper or sketchbook paper. It's a lot easier on your hand. Another problem is I am working on a metal surface and I do not have a blotter. So you're bearing down, you're working on a glass surface. That's a lot of pressure you're putting on your hand and on your joints. And even with a nice gummy sort of grip protector, it's a lot of stress on your hands, which is one of the reasons when I do thumbnails, I only do 3 a day. And I often, if I'm not recording, don't work at my desk. I work, usually I'll do my sketchbooks on top of, I'll do my thumbnails on top of my sketchbook, and that'll kind of absorb some of the impact. And I'm pointing that out to you guys because I don't want you to see me doing this and think I advocate that you do it like that. If you have a method that works for you, feel free to do that. If you're looking for a method though, I don't know, maybe don't use an all metal drafting pen, or at least not the Graph Gear 1000. They're tough, they do the job, but they're murder on my hands. It's the reason I have arthritis. So I want you guys to be able to draw forever and ever and ever. And so that's why I advocate do a limited number of thumbnails at a time. If you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on your hand, don't work on a hard surface. Just be kind to yourself. Take breaks, stretch your hand. You guys might have seen me pop my wrist or stretch my hands out like that. If I weren't recording, I'd probably take a break in between the 2 batches, but I did want to get them done. Anyway, so that is it for this part of our ongoing comic craft tutorial. Next, I'm going to scan these and do some digital stuff. And hopefully I can capture that for you guys or find a way to share that part of the process with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. I don't think I'm going to do a rough stage with this. Roughs would just be another layer of revision. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to digitize them, maybe do some digital corrections, find a way to share that with you guys however I can, and print them out onto my final paper, which will probably be Fabriano watercolor paper, and ink from there. So I'm actually eliminating the rough stage because this is a really simple art style and this is a really simple comic, and I don't think I need the roughs. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in our next tutorial. Bye guys.